Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, can I see your faces? We'll start with that and then I'll start with my presentation.
Students, switch on your video.
All right. Did everyone read a little bit about democracy, which we did yesterday? You can even send your responses in the chat box, not an issue. Was there any doubt? No doubts? All right. So we can start with today's topic, that is the Constitution of India. First of all, we need to know what is a constitution. We all are aware that each country needs to have a constitution. It may be in a written form or unwritten form, mostly written because it gives them concrete evidence and it becomes easy for the government and the people to follow the document. So, what is this document? What does it contain? It contains a legal sanction which states out the framework and the principles which govern the functioning of each and every organ of the state, as well as it also lays down certain principles or based on which the entire organization, that is the state government, is going to operate upon. It also gives a setup for the citizens to check whether the government is going according to the document which they agreed to, that is the constitution. Right? Now, when we talk about the Indian constitution, there are certain salient features which makes our constitution very special. First, today we will look into these matters, and along with it, I will deal with the smaller details in it. The first and the utmost
Excuse me,
salient
madam.
feature. Yes, ma'am.
Your slides are not visible. Stop sharing, then start slideshow and then start sharing so that it will be visible.
Is it visible now?
Go to that slide, feature slide. First slide is visible.
This one?
No, man. Yes, it's now visible, but it is that PowerPoint. It is not slideshow.
Yes. Now is it visible?
Yes, your name is visible now. Constitution of India.
Okay. Now is it fine?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So the first thing is that we have the lengthiest, that is longest constitution in the world. There are certain reasons behind it. First of all is our constitution is a detailed constitution. It has around 447 articles which are divided into 26 parts and 12 schedules. Now, why do we have so many articles and why is it so detailed? The reason being we are a country with lot of diversity. We have cultural diversity, we have
Hello.
linguistic. Yes,
बोल ना टेबल लिख रही थी 19 का हमारे इसमें
Ma'am,
yes, ma'am.
yeah, play slideshow so that we can see this slide
okay
with
no problem.
features. Sakshi, mute yourself. Press Shift F5.
I have, ma'am.
But that window is not visible. While sharing, share complete screen, or you can stop sharing and again start it.
Okay, I've started. So if you can.
Now, once started, go to the presentation slide, not on your PowerPoint slide. Or what you can do, first start your presentation and then share the slide.
I did, ma'am. I think there is an issue with this slide. I'll move on to the next if we can see that.
Yes, ma'am, please stop sharing first. Okay. Now, after this, whatever slideshow is there, you have started slideshow.
Yes.
Okay. Now, start sharing and go to that slideshow.
Now?
Yes, it's visible now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So because of the diversity in our country, we needed to have a detailed provisions of all. It may be the fundamental rights, the fundamental duties, or the directive principles, as well as the functioning and parts and functions of each and every uh, unit of this organization. Right? Now we have adopted the features of the constitution from various other constitutions worldwide. For example, from Britain, we have adopted the parliamentary government, rule of law notion, the legislative procedure, the single citizenship, and many more. From Ireland, we have taken the directive principles of state policy, election of the president and the vice president, nomination of members of the council by the president, and so on. From USA, we have taken the impeachment and functions of president and vice president, removal of Supreme Court judges, fundamental rights, judicial review, the preamble. Russia, we have taken fundamental duties. South Africa, we have taken amendment of the constitution. Now, many have criticized the Indian constitution, saying that it is just borrowed. The answer is no. When we look at the provisions which are implemented in the constitution, they are adopted, yet we have adapted them to our what you can say, our needs, and then we have enacted them. So it makes a very big difference. We have taken the good from other constitution and adapted to it. Now, it the constitution, when we talk about the length, it lays down the structure of not only the central government but also the state government. Unlike in American constitution, it only lays down the central government's structure. The states are given the freedom to have their own constitution. In our country, we have unique culture and ethnic nature, and that's the reason why we have to add on certain provisions in the part of fundamental rights and duties in order to protect our minorities, our culture, and the religious faith which is there. Now, at the same time, when we talk about the fundamental rights, there is certain thing which the citizens also need to do for the state, and those are covered under the fundamental duties. Directive principles of state policy we will deal in detail later on. The constitution length increases when it gives detailed structure of the judiciary as well as the public service commission and other departments. So over here, it doesn't only deal with the legislative authorities, executive authorities, but the local authorities as well. So it adds on to the length, because the entire part of the constitution is going to give the structure, function, powers, and duties of all the government officials. Now, moving on, the first part of the constitution, which is very important, is the preamble. Now, does anyone know that what is a preamble? Yes, anyone? What do you mean by preamble? No one?
It includes all the basic words, all the most important words of the entire constitution in just one document.
Right. It is just like an index of any book. It gives you the basic features or the essence of the entire document. So there are certain words which are very important. Okay. For example, first thing is we want to establish a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic nation. Okay. What do you mean by sovereign? That we are independent from any outside authority. Before independence, were we sovereign in nature? Yes?
No.
No, because we were under the government of British, right? So now, after independence, we have become sovereign. Now, what do you mean by socialist? Anyone? Now, socialism means production and distribution of anything what is produced in India. Is distribution is done by the state. The state is going to regulate. Fine. Secular means the state has no religion. Nowhere in the constitution or no law you will find in India is governing any particular religion or favoring any particular religion. There will be certain provisions which will be helping the minorities, but they are not going to regulate the minorities or any religion in specific. Next, democratic. We derive our authority from the will of the people. Yesterday we have seen that. Republic means the head of the state is elected. Now, is our president a hereditary post? Is it a hereditary post?
No, ma'am.
No. So we elect the president. Do we do it directly like USA?
No.
No. The parliamentary form of government, we have a so the second feature of the constitution is we have parliamentary form of government. It is at both central and state level, right? The government is responsible to legislate, that is, make law. The president is the constitutional head, and the real executive power is vested with the Council of Ministers. Now, it is said that the Indian Constitution is a unique blend of rigidity and flexibility. Why is it so? First thing, written constitutions are rigid in nature. Why? Because they have already laid down the provisions. You cannot, what you can say, interpret the written constitution the way you want. No, there are certain restrictions to it. But in case of India, we have a special provision to amend these provisions. So with special method, I mean is the Amendment Act needs to be passed by the Parliament with a special resolution. Now, how is it that can the Parliament amend by passing the special resolution any feature of the Constitution? The answer is no. The basic structure of the Constitution needs to be maintained. We cannot change the basic structure. So what do you mean by basic structure? Basic structure is nothing but the essence. Whatever we saw in the preamble, the sovereignty, republic, democratic, socialist, secular, this forms the basic structure of the constitution. We cannot change it. Tomorrow, can somebody come up with an idea to make it a capitalistic kind of constitution or add on to it? The answer is no, because socialism is a basic structure of our constitution. So that cannot be amended. Now, the next important and most well-known part of the constitution is part 3, which deals with fundamental rights. How many of you are aware about your fundamental rights? Yes, can I have hands up in the chat box at least? Yes? No one? Okay. The state over here cannot make any law which is contrary or violates any right that is guaranteed under this part. Any law or a state action which is against such right will be void ab initio, that is, it is held to be unconstitutional. It cannot be enforced. Now, when I give you a right, does it mean that it is being implemented or it is followed? The answer is no, right? You need to implement it. If somebody is doing any wrong to that right, somebody is violating your right, you need to have a remedy. Then only we can ensure that the right is kept intact. So for that, we have certain judicial remedies, constitutional remedies by way of writs. There are basically 5 writs: habeas corpus, quo warranto, certiorari, and mandamus. We will deal with them in detail. First, I will deal with each and every fundamental right which is there, explain to certain extent as to what exactly are these rights. So the first right which we get under our constitution is right to equality. Now, right to equality is not only about prohibition of discrimination, but also equality before law. So when you approach the judiciary or when any action is being implemented in our society, it is equally applicable to us. We also enjoy equal protection of law. Can the police come in and say that no, I'm only going to protect this part of the city and this part I'm not going to protect? No, we all enjoy equal protection of law in all walks of life. Next is prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. Now, these are very important grounds. Why? Because they deal with the basic categories on the basis of which discrimination took place in the earlier times. Religion, of course. Race, not that much in India. Casteism, yes. On the basis of gender, yes. Women are not allowed here, women are not allowed there, children are not allowed, so on and so forth. Place of birth, yes. So where do you get what you can say, see this kind of discrimination? In all facets. That's the reason why you have equal access to all the public places. It may be shops, hotels. You might have seen in some parts of India that in there were hotels where certain type some people were not allowed on the basis of their caste or race. So that is prohibited. Action can be taken immediately. When it comes to shops, the shopkeeper cannot say that, okay, what, tell me your place of birth and then only I'll give you goods. The answer is no. You all have equal access to wells, tanks, and bathing ghats. This is all derived from the earlier atrocities which took place based upon caste and place of birth. Next, very important, that is equal opportunity in public employment. Irrespective of your religion, race, caste, sex, and place of birth, you have equal opportunity to take part in public employment, that is the governmental jobs. Now, when I'm talking about these rights, we need to understand that what is a state, because all these rights are going to be enforced against the state. If the state is violating your right, you have a right to file a petition against it. So, what is a state? Is it only the government? The answer is no. Article 12 of the Constitution deals with the definition of state. And it is a very inclusive kind of definition where it doesn't only talk about the state, that is the government, but also any other organization which is carrying out the role of a state. See, we have now privatization in all sectors, and it is but obvious that certain powers of the government are also delegated to the private sector. So those private entities, for carrying out the function of the state, are also liable or made accountable under this part. The next thing is abolition of untouchability and abolition of titles. So what do you mean by a title? Anyone? You might, while studying British India, the history, you might have come across the title of Sir. Okay. Now that was a title which was there. Is it existing now? No. With the abolition of titles, you cannot give any title like Sir and other things. You only have professional or academic titles which are there. So for if you're a doctorate, you get a DR. If you're a MBBS, you get a DR. Right? If you are from the armed forces, your title will be your post. Right? So no inherent titles which are there, only professional and educational. Now this is the fun part. We all talk about it, we all know about it, but we don't know what are the restrictions on it. Right? The next is most important, right to freedom. There are certain freedoms which are guaranteed under the Constitution. First one, we all know, is freedom of speech and expression. How many of us exercise this freedom and talk about it? Not just exercise, but talk about it, saying that it is my right to express myself. Yes, how many of us do that? Anyone? You can at least give a thumbs up in your chat box, or is everyone sleeping?
No, ma'am.
I have only one active listener today, I guess. All right. The next is, so can I go on blabbering anything I want? Of course not. If I'm defaming anyone, if I'm talking things which can lead to violence in the society, or it is against the public policy, then I am not allowed to exercise my freedom of speech and expression. If I'm because of my speech or expression, if I'm going to hurt anyone's sentiment, if I'm going to put my country's security at risk, I am not allowed. Next, freedom of assembly without arms, that is peaceful assembly. So what do you mean by that? The Constitution says you can come around, you can gather up, have an assembly. Okay, you can have certain issues which need to be talked out with the public. You can have assemblies, but without arms. Because if there are too many people gathering around, and if there is any issue and they have arms, then it becomes illegal. Because the usage of arms can cause violence in that particular part where the assembly is taking place. Next is freedom of association and unions. Whenever there is a workplace or an industry, the workers over there, in order to ensure that their rights are protected, they can form associations or unions so that they can put forth their points towards the management, and it is a peaceful place to work and a healthy place to work. Next, freedom to move freely throughout the territory of India. Can you travel anywhere in India? Does anyone stop you if you are an Indian citizen? We go on vacations, we go on trips. We are allowed to freely move throughout the territory of India. Next, freedom to practice any profession, occupation, trade, or business. Of course, it should not be immoral or illegal trade, right? So that is one thing. Another thing is the outcome of your trade or occupation should not be against the public policy. That is very important. Now, you might think that what is immoral and illegal? What is the difference between it? There are certain morals which are followed in the society, yet these are not regulated by law. Okay? And there are certain things which may be accepted but not legal. Next is freedom to reside in any part of the country. Yes, you can buy a house and live in any part of the country, but own property might be restricted in case the state in which you want to go has certain areas which is reserved for the scheduled tribes or the nomadic tribes which are there for preserving their culture. So the state has a little bit of liberty over there, but of course they have to be within the limits. Next is protection in respect of conviction from offenses. It is a bit technical for you all, but the thing is that under this, you cannot be held liable, or you cannot be convicted for the same offense twice. So today, if say I have been convicted for theft in XYZ's house for say stealing 10 lakh rupees. Tomorrow, for the same offense, that person XYZ cannot go to another court and say that this person has committed theft in my house. Why? Because I am already convicted, that is punished for the crime once. Next is right to life and liberty, which is very important. We all know, and this is the only right which is available to non-citizens as well. Okay, other rights which are there, which we have seen or will be seeing, are only applicable to citizens of India. Right to life is the only right which is applicable or available to everyone who is within the territory of India. Next is right to education. You all are aware that we all have right to education. At least primary education is compulsory now. Next is protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. So preventive detention is allowed, but you need to follow the arresting authority has to follow certain protocols under the law, and then only you can be arrested. Next is right against exploitation, which covers human trafficking and forced labor as well as child labor. Now, these three things are very important because not only at the national level, it is a problem at international level as well. So we need to take care of people who are being trafficked or forced into labor. You might have seen or heard about the news relating to people being kept in the stone quarries and other mines. They have to work day and night without any breaks. So in such things, this is nothing but forced labor. So they are, if they cannot go to the court, it is because it is a fundamental right. Any person who is aware about such a situation can file a public interest litigation under this to the court. Child labor, of course, a very heinous crime which is addressed in our constitution. The next is freedom of religion. Right. I told you that we are a secular state. So we are not going to say that this religion is the state religion and this is allowed, this is not allowed. No. It is free for you to profess and practice and even propagate your religion, but under certain circumstances it is not allowed. When it is against a public policy or the sentiments of the public, then it is not allowed. Freedom to manage religious affairs. So if you are forming a trust, if you have say a temple or a mosque or any other religious place which needs to be governed, of course there is money coming in in the form of donations, so that needs to be managed. Then you need to have proper accounting, so the money is not misused for illegal purposes, so those accounts need to be taken care of. So anyone, you can have your own authorities, the chairman and the trustees which are going to take care of it. You have the entire freedom to do it. Now government, as it is a secular state, is not going to tax for promotion of any religion. So you don't have a religious tax. You might have GST and income tax, but you don't have any religious tax. Right? Next, freedom for attending any religious instructions. You can freely go to the cultural or the religious activities. Of course, prior permissions need to be taken for the safety of the people. Next are the cultural and educational rights. Now, minorities, this section part of the constitution deals with the educational and cultural rights of the minorities. Now, what is a minority? There can be a linguistic minority or a cultural minority. So when it is a minority, they want to propagate their, say, religion or language. So they need to have the capacity to do so. So they can have educational institutions which propagate, or they do more research in their own minority or language or religion, whatever it is. So that is covered under this. The next very important is the constitutional remedies. As I told you, if you don't have a judicial redressal system, no use of giving a big list of rights if you cannot enforce them. The 5 writs are for specific reasons. Okay, so habeas corpus is a writ which literally means bring the body. Now, what is this? Am I talking about a dead body over here? The answer is no. So, for example, if somebody is unlawfully detained, as I told you, that people might be kept in a mine for a long period of time to do because of the forced labor. Now, the government under this habeas corpus writ can ask those people to be presented before the court. If, for example, a person has fulfilled his sentence in the prison, in the jail, and yet that person is kept beyond that period. For example, the imprisonment was for only 3 years, but after 3 years, 1 more year he or she is kept in the prison. At that time, habeas corpus is the writ which will be issued, which tells the government authority to release that person from the prison, imprisonment. And now they also get compensation for the extra number of years they have been kept detained in the cell. Next is Mandamus. It is to direct the public authority to do its duty. Example might be, for example, say in your area, the corporation servants are not picking up garbage. Okay, they have to pick up the garbage at least daily or at least thrice a week. They are not doing it. They are neglecting their lawful duty. It is the duty of that authority to keep the space clean, the public place clean. So if they are not doing it, the writ of mandamus can be issued. Next is quo warranto. It deals with to direct a person to vacate an office assumed wrongfully. Right? What does it mean? Say in the university there is a post. Now university is governed under the state because it is a statutory body, which is again coming under state. There is an official who has been wrongfully appointed. Maybe that person didn't have the proper qualification for that post and is still occupying that post, carrying out the business as usual. Then in that case, there can be a writ of quo warranto which can be issued in order to make that person vacate that office. Next is prohibition. It is nothing but to prohibit a lower court from proceeding on a case. Say, for example, there is a reason to be believed that the case needs to be filed in a higher court than the current court. The higher court can tell the lower court that please don't proceed with this case because it has certain importance and it needs to be dealt differently. In that case, the writ of prohibition is applicable. The next thing is certiorari. That is where the power of the higher court to remove a proceeding from a lower court and bring it before itself. Maybe it is say an example of a scam. Okay, the lower court is dealing with it, but there is an application filed where it is suspected that this is not a mere small say negotiable instrument default, but it is a much bigger scam which is done at multiple levels. So in order to have a proper
मला पण पाहिजे
investigation,
मोबाईल त्या बघायचं रेसिपी डिस्कशन काय आलं मी कधीपासून बघू फोन लागले
okay. So in that case, the higher court may tell the lower court that this is not an ordinary matter. It needs to be dealt by the higher court. So in that case, the writ of certiorari will be applicable. Now the other thing is the military rule, or when we talk about the armed forces or the paramilitary forces, there are certain restrictions which need to be put on them in order to make the fundamental rights more strongly enforceable. So any person who is carrying out the duty of the state cannot take away your fundamental rights. Of course, if you need to read the limitations of the fundamental rights along with it. It also ensures that the parliament doesn't make any law contrary to the fundamental right. The only thing is it needs to see whether it is the basic structure of that fundamental right which is being breached, or one part of it which needs to be regulated by law. So for example, if I talk about freedom of speech and expression, and we need to also deal with defamation. So whatever you talk is freedom, but defamation is a wrong against any other person. So that needs to be dealt. So laws can be made in order to deal with the negative part of that particular right. So, am I clear till here? Okay. The next is the directive principles of state policy. They are incorporated under Part 4 of the Constitution. They set out the aims and objectives to be taken up by the state in the governance of the country. Over here, as fundamental rights were made mandatory, directive principles of the state policy are mere directional. They are not, their non-compliance is not going to affect the legality, or it is not enforceable like the fundamental rights. So is it that the state is altogether neglecting them? The answer is no, because they are not as enforceable directly like the fundamental rights. They are being implemented by either passing a law or by way of judicial decisions, so that it becomes enforceable. Okay, so we will see one by one the directive principles, and I will tell you a few examples how they have been enacted or enforced. The first one is everyone has a right to have occupation and adequate means of livelihood, men and women both. So, so is it that certain post the what you can say, there are laws in the labor law or the Factories Act which deal with equal opportunity for earning livelihood. Next is the ownership and control of the material resources are so that they are distributed for the common good. Here is your socialism. Next is operation of economic system should be such that there is no concentration of wealth, and it is distributed equally among all sects of life of the society. So whenever we talk about economics and the economic laws, you will find certain provisions which deal with the distribution of wealth, right? For example, when you take the income tax slabs, is it that the total everyone is going to pay equal tax? The answer is no. As per your slab, you are income, you are going to pay your income tax. So what is the ultimate thing? What is happening is equally everyone, percentile, everyone is paying, right? So on the face of it, it may not be equal, but the treatment is given equally. So if I have more, I will pay more. If you have less, you will pay less, as per the percentile of your income. The next is equal pay for equal work. This is one of the most important provisions which have been enacted in the Factories Act and the labor laws in totality. All the labor laws ensure that this takes place. The Minimum Wages Act was also passed on similar lines. Next is the health of the workers. Tender age children should be protected from any kind of abuse. That is by way of many acts which are there. Even you have the Worksman Act, which is there, which deals with certain provisions which ensure that the conditions, working conditions, are better. Now you will see that when we talk about children and opportunities to have a overall wholesome development of a child, you have the child rights, you have the right to education, which is there, you have child labor being covered under the fundamental rights, and along with that, a special provision in the Directive Principles as well. So, in all parts of your constitution, you will see that children have been protected by various provisions. Next is your legal aid. So, justice, as I told you, protection of law is equally applicable to all. But there might be certain sections of the society which may not be able to approach the court. It may be because of economic reasons, it may be because of social reasons. Then it is the duty of the government to pass legislations which enables such sections of the society to approach and attain justice. So, for example, you have the state and the central legislation which talks about legal aid to certain sections of the society. Mainly, it gives free legal aid to or appointment of lawyers for certain classes of citizens. For example, it will be women, economically, and other disabled people. So they can approach these cells in the court and get justice. The next is Panchayat System, which we will do tomorrow because we are doing decentralization tomorrow. So the organization of village panchayat is a very important part of our governance. Needs at each level, at central, state, local level, are different. And hence we need to have a grassroots level system to take care of governance. And that is done by the village panchayat and the local government. So that is also there mentioned in the Directive Principles of State Policy. Next is provisions to secure humane conditions of work and maternity relief. This is also taken care by the Factories Act and the Worksman Compensation Act. Next is the state shall be within the limits of its economic capacity and development make effective provisions to secure right to work, education, and public assistance in case of unemployment, old age, sickness, disability, and other things. So you will find that all these provisions are actively dealt by way of schemes, governmental schemes which are there, which are implemented by each and every state as well as the central government. Have you ever seen the government website? How many of you have seen it? You will find various current schemes which deal with all these problems over there. So do visit the government websites to verify and see as to how these directive principles of state policy are being implemented by the executive, not just the legislative, but executive as well. Again, the same thing, it is relating to the economic organization of all the workers in all kinds of trades, occupations, agriculture, industry, everywhere. Now UCC, that is the Uniform Civil Code, is, as you all are aware, that our family laws which deal with marriage, divorce are different as per the religion. So it is the ambition of the constitution to have a uniform code to deal with marriage, inheritance, and the divorce matters. But we are not yet successfully implemented it because many sections of the society are not in favor of it. So that has not been implemented till now. Okay, so the next one is again about education till the age of 14, which is again now taken care with the help of the amendment and added right to education in the part 3 of the constitution. Special care for weaker sections of SC, ST and other social classes where social injustice was seen earlier. Raising nutrition and standard of living. Nutrition, when you see, you have the government schemes relating to free food and other material is given at a subsidized rate. Agricultural schemes which are there, you get lower rate loans for the farmers. Patenting again is a law where if it is any scientific invention dealing with animal husbandry or agriculture, it is not patented. Why? Because it should be made freely available to all in order to enhance the agricultural sector, animal husbandry sector. So you can connect that provision over here. Next is to protect the environment. So you have the environment protection laws, wildlife protection laws to deal with this matter. Can anyone tell me as to which ministry or which part of the governance deals with the what you can say historical monuments which are there in India? Do we have anything which protects the historical monuments or structures?
Minister of Culture.
Yes. And is there any what you can say scheme going on dealing with it? You might have seen advertisements on the television relating to it. Have you seen awareness programs?
Like, ma'am, tourism.
Yes.
Yeah, in Maharashtra, I've seen these ads showing the forts and all the tourist places.
Right. And the care we should take when we visit them, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. The next is separation of judiciary from the executive in the public services of the state. Of course, we have talked about independence of judiciary yesterday, how it is important. There are these things for international peace and security, honorable relations with the nations, foster respect for international law and treaty. Do we actually have international laws and treaties which are imbibed in our laws? Do we find any provisions like that to ensure that the international treaties are followed in India? Can you name any sectors where you will find more international law being implemented? You will find international law being implemented in the areas of human rights, environment, trade, alright, because we are a global village now. So all these factors need to be taken care by the national legislation as well. So it is there in the DPSPs and it is being implemented as well. Arbitration, international arbitration. Have you ever heard about various news which come up with relating to arbitration, international arbitration? What is arbitration?
Reconciliation of the cases outside court.
Yes, correct. The next feature is federation with a strong centralizing tendency. We all know we are a federal structure. We have the center, we have the state and the local government, right? The purview and the function, the sphere of functioning is given for all the three, or we will say state and the center. But there are certain circumstances when the center will take control over the entire function. There are three, that is during the emergency period. There are three kinds of emergencies which are defined in the constitution: national emergency, state emergency, and economic emergency. As the case may be, the center will assume the power and then conduct the policy making and the governance as per the need. Independent judiciary. So because the judiciary is the custodian of the rights of citizens, it needs to be independent and impartial. As I told you, we are a secular state. We don't have a religious state. So it treats all religions equally and will not regulate and make laws relating to any religion. It will only govern the relationship between citizens and not the religion. Next is adult suffrage. As I told you, every citizen above 18 is having the right to vote. Next is very important, that is the fundamental duties. First question is, are they enforceable like the fundamental rights? Do you think they are? The answer is no. But like the DPSPs, that is the Directive Principles of State Policies, there are certain laws and judicial decisions which make these fundamental duties enforceable, that is mandatory. So what are these fundamental duties? Respecting the national flag, the national anthem, the institutions, to cherish and follow the noble ideas which has inspired our national struggle of freedom, upholding the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India, protecting and defending our country by rendering national service if it is needed, promotion of fraternity, preserving the rich heritage and culture, to protect the environment, to safeguard the public property, and of course, you need to have a sense of your unity and to think about the country and not just yourself. And lastly, again, it has a fundamental duty on the parents or guardians to provide education to their children till the age of 14. Okay. Last point here is single citizenship. In USA, you might be aware that they have a strong federal structure and they also have state citizenship. They are citizens of USA as a whole, as well as wherever, in whichever state they are, they also get a state citizenship. In India, we don't have state citizenship. We only have Indian citizenship. Okay. And we all have same equal rights which are there enlisted in this constitution. All right. Now, there are certain questions which are important when we deal with constitution. What are the salient features? We have dealt with them. Why is preamble important? As I told you, it is an index of the essence of all the features of the constitution. Fundamental rights, duties, and directive principles of state policy need to be studied by us in order to understand the essence. Of course, the constitution is not limited to this. This is only a small part of it. The other part of the constitution deals with each and every organ and the structure of the government, may it be legislative, judiciary, or the executive. Their appointments, functions, powers are enlisted along with the schedules. Now, you might be thinking as to what is the difference between articles and the schedules or the parts. Parts is a collective way to divide the articles based upon their theme. For example, fundamental rights are in part 3. Directive principles are in part 4. Part 2 deals with citizenship and state, other things. So in this way, it is a collective collection of articles. Schedules give the list of various things which are not. What will happen is if we include the lists, like for the example, it may be a list of states in India, list of languages in India, which are important when we deal with the linguistic provisions or the minority provisions or what is a state. So in that case, if we put the lists in the article, it becomes very long and amending that provision becomes very, very difficult and time taking. So in order to make these frequently amended parts of the constitution easy to be dealt with, they are put in the schedule. The list can be amended quickly, not the provision, because again, if you want to deal with the article, the provision, the basic structure doctrine will be applicable. So that's the reason why, for the purpose of convenience, the schedules are made which deal with the various lists which are right. Any questions till now? Any doubts?
Ma'am,
Yes. Yes, any questions? You can put it in the chat box if you want. No? Anything more you want to know about the Constitution? There is a question. How do we make sure that the right of speech and expression is not violated? So, for example, nobody can restrict you from giving uh, any speech or expressing yourself until and unless it is either defamatory to others. Now, defamation is where you are saying something false about somebody else's image. Okay, that is defamation. Next, if it is going to hamper the peace of the society, if you are spreading rumors, if somebody is posting something immoral which will be hurting anyone's sentiments, then in that case your right to speech is not going to work as a fundamental right. There are certain limitations to it. Okay, so if there is any hate speech which is given, which is not true, but you are only venting out, you went out in your own space. Why are you venting it out to the public, which may cause trouble and may cause violence or anything? So there are certain reasonable restrictions on your fundamental rights. Any other? Any other thing you want to know? How conciliation differs from arbitration? Okay. Conciliation is far less formal than arbitration. In case of arbitration, an arbitrator is appointed who is a neutral party, and the basic difference will be the arbitral award, that is a judgment given by the arbitrator, is enforceable, okay, in the law, and you can only appeal it in the High Court and the Supreme Court. When we talk about conciliation, again, conciliator is also a neutral party, but his reward or his decision is not as enforceable like the arbitral award. So international community follows the international arbitration law, which is there, which talks about who will be the arbitrator, what will be the proceedings and other things. The basic difference between legal proceeding and arbitration is that the procedural laws like CRPC, CPC are there, which are applicable in the court of law, are not applicable over here. It is much more simpler and faster to go about with the proceedings in arbitration and conciliation. Anything else? Some laws can be twisted to suit any interpretation. So how can the right meaning of the laws reach the Okay. When we talk about interpretation of any law, there are certain principles used to interpret a law. You cannot just blindly twist any law. So, the makers of the law also take proper, what you can say, they have to use certain nomenclature and have to use certain way in which the law is made or written. The sources of law are generally any kind of treaty which is there, any kind of policy or principle which is enshrined in the constitution. That is the basis of the law. When I talk about the constitution, if you want to interpret any part of the constitution, then we have to look into the discussions which happened in the constitutional assembly, that is while making the constitution. Over there, even on the governmental website, you will find the volumes of constitutional assembly debates. That is where the actual what you can say reasoning of any provision has been recorded. So if we have any doubt about interpretation of any word or any principle in the constitution, we go back to the debates and verify as to what was the thinking behind, what is the thought process behind that particular provision. Along with that, the judiciary, the Supreme Court and the High Court are the only two courts who are allowed to interpret the constitution. Okay, if there is any ambiguity in the minds of the lower courts, they send the matter to the High Court and the Supreme Court for interpretation. It is interpreted and again sent back to the lower court. So it is being taken care by the judiciary as well. Any other? Any other question? Public policy is nothing but the general laws, the general common good of the public. That is the public policy. For example, if there is any law expressly prohibiting, say, untouchability, and somebody promotes it by way of any social action or a state action, then in that case it is said to be against the public policy, against the law. Anything? Yes, others? No? I thought you will have much more questions for constitution, at least the fundamental rights and duties. Have you ever read the preamble of the Constitution? It is written on each and every textbook we have been using since first standard. No one? Okay, I will leave you with a question which I think you can think about it. What about right to silence? When we talk about right to speech and expression, do we also have right to remain silent? That is one thing. Another thing, we had a question on ex post facto law. Yes, when I talk about conviction for offenses, you can be convicted or held liable for offenses only when the current law, which is enforced in India that particular time, you can be held liable. You cannot be held liable for anything uh, which you have done before that law was passed. So, for example, if in 1955 the government passed a law saying that you can have only one spouse, that is a husband or a wife, and you had two spouses before the act was passed, you cannot be held liable. But post passing that law, in each and every law, there is a date mentioned about from when this law will be applicable. It will be taken as offense only after that period of time, date which is that mentioned. Anything else? Can anyone compel you to give evidence against yourself? The answer is no. Do read about right to privacy. It is also included. I forgot to tell you about right to life, that it is one of the most widely interpreted freedom. Okay, I guess you are done with your questions. Uh, yes, ma'am. Is the teacher coordinator here?
Students,
There any laws in the
students, do you
constitution that
have any doubt?
there are no contradictions in the constitution itself, the makers have taken care that there is no contradiction. If there is any contradiction, by way of the amendment, they will look into the essence and the basic structure of the constitution and make the appropriate amendment. So there is no contradiction or any kind of ambiguity. I hope you got the answer. Any other questions? Okay. Ma'am, can we, should I continue with the next topic or should I conclude today's session?
You can continue with next topic so that it will cover up till 2:30. It's up to you.
Okay, but because decentralization is a big topic, which is the
Okay.
next module.
Okay, then we will start it tomorrow.
Okay. Students, please read and come a little bit. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.